Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. So today we have 2,000 points of Orks Bad Moons versus Disciples of Belakor, Chaos Demons. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
Alright, so I am bringing 2,000 points, or more specifically 1,985 points of Chaos Demons under Belakor, Disciples of Belakor. I have a Supreme Commander detachment for Belakor, and the rest is a Battalion detachment. And I have 5 CP for it. So first off, obviously Supreme Commander Belakor. There is no actual model for Belakor, so I took this cool-looking Nurgle Demon Prince one. Yes, and so for him, I gave him his abilities Pall of Despair and Penumbral Curses. These are essentially debuffs. I wasn't really going to go with like an offensive spellcaster. It is just like, because I don't have enough to really make it really work. And so he has a lot of special abilities of debuffs, reducing enemies' attacks and stuff like that. So he's a debuffer. He's very strong in melee. He has his Warlord trait, which basically allows me to give Chapter Master rerolls to any core, which is every model in my army except for the Beast of Nurgle. And then for characters, so I thought I need some good fighters. So I took the Skull Taker because he is really good in combat. He's very strong. That toughness 6. So he's going to easily slaughter enemies and characters. And then I got the second best one, the Changeling, which is... he's as strong as whoever he's facing, so he's also a character killer. The stronger the enemy character, the stronger he will be. And he has Smite, and I forgot to give him a spell in the thing, but he has Bolt of Change, because all his other spells would just give buffs to Tzeentch units, and there's not enough of them to justify that. So basically he just has an extra attack ability. Then, onto troops. So, the cream of the crop here, all different reasons. First, we have Bloodletters. Okay, they were disappointing last time, but they're pretty good in melee, good damage. They're ridiculously high AP, high attacks, and high strength. Very useful. And since Belakor focuses as a locus, they can easily be deep striked into very good places to reinforce it. And then I have the greatest tough units, Pink Horrors. These tar pits worked incredibly well, and they're ranged as well. So I'm bringing them in as my tough line troopers, 2 units, hopefully they'll do well. And then potential MVPs, Nurglings, who will sit in the back and do nothing, but they're basically 60 points for someone who sits and does nothing. And hold objectives, and they have OBSEC because they're troops, so good. Then on to elites. I have a full unit of Beasts of Nurgle. Very strong, 6-inch movement only, however, they're very good and capable and tough. And they can do some pretty decent damage, actually, surprisingly. So, and then of course I have 2 units of Flamers of Tzeentch. These guys are going to get nerfed because apparently in the Games Workshop puts out these videos of them talking about the meta, and they specifically mention these guys like they're too efficient. So the hammer's going to be dropped, so I'm going to enjoy them before they get nuked to probably 33 to 40 points a model each. And then finally, models that will not render in, Plague Drones. They're very tough, they're fast movement, so basically good cavalry. And that is 2,000 points of Belakor.
Alright, you guys, so for today, obviously 2,000 points. I believe it's actually 2,000 points on the dot. It is. And this is a Outrider detachment, actually. And I'm playing the Bad Moons, so I was looking at it because we were trying to play one of the clans that we haven't played. And so there's a couple of choices, but I ended up with Bad Moons because I was like, I wonder what you can do with just basically a range and AP buff. Obviously, AP does not apply to demons. And I ended up with a Speed Freaks Bad Moons army. I've never played Orks before, so it'll be interesting to see how this turns out for me. So it's a pretty simple list. I have 1 HQ, which is a Death Killer War Trike, because to my understanding, you need one for Speed Freaks WA. So anyway, he's literally as is. I didn't give him a relic, but all I did was give him the Warlord trait Brutal but Cunning, which basically, if something doesn't go to the damage step, like one of his melee attacks, I can basically roll again that many dice, so however many it is. And then behind, so that's my only HQ. So behind him in troops is 2 squads of Orc Boys, one with Sluggers and Choppas, and one with just shooters, because, you know, they're going to shoot. And then the boss knobs, even though they look like they have stuff, don't actually have stuff. The boss knob with the shooters is literally just a base model, but I couldn't actually find a base model, so there's this guy with this giant axe for some reason. The other boss knob with the sluggers and choppers actually does have a big chopper, but that's it. But those are my troops. I didn't actually need them in this, but I wanted something that could sit on objectives. I forgot that Gretchen existed, because I could have had 4 squads of those, but I was like, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then in elites, I got a squad of 5 tank busters, and they just are as is. There's nothing elaborate with them. They're just 5 guys with rocket launchers. And then to their immediate right are 5 mega knobs, and these guys are also just base mega knobs. They have the custom shooters and the power claws, and that's pretty much it. And then fast attacks is where it gets kind of, I say kind of interesting, but you know. Anyway, I have a squad full of war bikes, so they all have the DACA guns, so 2 each. And then I gave them all choppers because might as well. Orcs are known for their combat, not their shooting. Everything in my army has a 5-up ballistic skill, so that'll be interesting to deal with. But so war bikers, they benefit from the 6-inch range boost on their DACA guns, and then they also, being bikers, benefit from the speed freaks, and they are core, so I can give them exploding 6s on their shooting, which will be nice because they'll need it to do anything with that 5-up ballistic skill. Then moving on, I have 3 Boom DACA Snaz wagons. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they have to actually stay as a unit. Yes, but they're pretty cool. They have DACA guns with a lot of shots, and that's actually pretty much it. They just got a bunch of DACA guns. So again, just trying to capitalize on the Bad Moons thing. And so they'll be pretty cool. We'll see how they turn out. And then I have 6 Def Copters all in a single squad. They just have the base copter rockets, and that's it. I think that's the only thing you can swap out. And so I'll see how they go. They are speed freaks, so they'll benefit from the speedy wah. And then behind those guys are Mega Track Scrap Jets. Now these guys are interesting because they have some, I mean, they're base, so I didn't add or change anything, but they're just really odd unit. So I just think they're interesting. I was just looking through the Orc Codex and I was like, what the heck is this army? And so we'll see how they go. I believe they also have to stay a unit. So that'll be interesting to see how I navigate the map with just 2 squads of these big old 3-man vehicles. And then those are my fast attacks. And so the heavy supports are the 2 kill rigs. Being demons, I kind of assumed he would have psychers. I guess technically he still has psychers, but not quite like I thought it would be. But I was like, well, I need something to deal with psychers because orcs don't naturally have something. So I was like, oh, kill rigs are interesting. They're predominantly shooty and they're vehicles, so we'll see what happens. They have heavy guns, and they'll get the 6-inch bonus. And yeah, their psychic powers aren't super great, and they don't. I don't know. So we'll see. They were just kind of like a psyker thing that I just decided to take. I decided to take 2, and so that is 2,000 points of Orcs Bad Moons.
All right. So for today's mission, it is mission 1-2, tear down their icons. It is control 1, control 2, control more. And as well as the mission objective is we have to get to a unit onto our opponent's half of the board, and then we start a action to plant an objective. And every time we do this, it has to be on their opponent's half of the board, and each one has to be more than 9 inches away from the previous one. So we have to basically get all over. Every one we do gets 4 points at the end of the game. And our opponent can then go to the markers and do the same action on them to defuse them. So this will be an interesting game. So we'll see how this goes. Alright, so for secondaries, for demons, we're going to go with the classic Nourished by Terror. Then Reality Rebels. So Nourished by Terror is basically every time every model of his that flees from combat, that's 1 point for me. Now, since he's orcs, their leadership is much lower, and they suffer heavily from attrition, so this is very likely to happen. Reality Rebels is basically a better version of Engage in All Fronts, because there's 5 points I can take, as long as I have more models than him, and it kind of looks that way. And then I have Raise the Banners High. Really hard to find a third, and so this was the best thing I could possibly think of. And that's my secondaries.
Yeah. So, I usually like to take a lot of the unique secondaries, and so, however, in this case with the orcs and my very specific army composition, almost none of them are plausible for me. So, even this one, the biggest and the best, I don't know if I can pull it off, but essentially my warlord has to do either, I get 2 points if he does any kind of wound damage in melee against a character, monster, or vehicle. If 5 or more enemy models were destroyed as a result of attacks made by my warlord. If an enemy unit was destroyed as a result of an attack made by my warlord. Or if he's within range of an objective marker I control that is not within my deployment zone. And so I can get up to 5 points, and each one of those is worth 2. So it just means my warlord is gonna be so busy. And then, so because the others I'm pretty sure I could not pull off in any way. Usually, even if I think there's a chance, I'll try, but not with my army. So I took Engage in All Fronts and no prisoners. So obviously Engage in All Fronts, I just have to be into a table quarter. Relatively easy. I have a speedy army. And no prisoners, so basically I get points for killing things, and that is the goal. So if that doesn't go well, then obviously the game has not gone well for me.
Alright, so for deployment, essentially what happens for the demon side is that I really will... so first, I wanted to focus on the objectives. So the important units that we're going to go for the objectives, we're going to get the prime real estate to go there. Horrors are placed out as sort of buffers. They still have 3-up and vulnerable saves against shooting, so I'm very comfortable with them being out there. Apart from that, I kept trying to bait out to see where his characters would be, more specifically his kill rig. And then I would place my characters to counter them. Skull Taker would counter one, Changeling could counter another, as best they could. And Belakor is in the dead center. He's actually pretty well protected for where he is. I mean, he's very tough, but we'll see what happens. And he's in the middle, so he can go anywhere and respond to any threat. And then the Beasts of Nurgle are up top to help give like some punch to the top. And then the Skull Taker has the bodyguard, the Plague Drones to protect him. And the rest are in Deep Strike. The Bloodletters are in Deep Strike. They can easily go teleport to Belakor as a Locust. And the Flamers are in Deep Strike because to better counter whatever my opponent is doing. And that is my deployment idea.
All right. So for me, my deployment was a little bit different as far as ideas go, because my units are big and chunky. And so it was honestly just trying to find space where they could all fit. That was my challenge. But so I had my kill rigs on either ends just for anti-psyker bubbles, but also to help deal out some psychic damage, hopefully. My infantry, so originally I was planning on doing some deep striking with like my mega knobs, but then I was like, you know what, that historically does not work very well for me, and they can just go and try and take the middle. So I actually kept them in, I set them up near the middle. And so really it's just kind of about trying to kind of take some sides, or take some objectives and do a bit of damage. The interesting aspect is that my army is more focused on the shooting, which means as mobile as it is, I really probably only have a solid turn or two, maybe at most, before I'm trying to deal with combat. So yeah, so it'll be interesting, I think. But yeah, so I just kind of spread stuff out. My war boss is in the middle, kill rigs on the sides. Yeah, that was really as specific as I was trying to be.
Alright, so for who goes first? Do you want to start this one off?
Sure. I do not know. No, I actually think that I want to go first in this one. It's usually not the case, and especially as a shooting army, it also seems somewhat counterproductive. But because of how kind of congealed I am and all my units are just kind of stuck in the same spots, it would help give me the opportunity to kind of move them around a little bit and break them up before he kind of expanded himself. And yeah, so I think I want to go first. Now, if I don't go first, it's not like the biggest deal for me, simply because I'm a shooting army. So you move forward, I shoot you. You know, I go first. I take some of the board and still actually try and shoot you, I think. So I think I would go first just for the mobility aspect of it, but I don't know if it matters too much actually for me.
Well, as for me, if I go first, I take objectives, I get up there. I'm pretty tanky. Most of the units that would go first would be 3-up and vulnerable save horrors. It's hard to say because I know you have very strong shooting. So it's really hard for me.
Strong, but
it's
all ballistic skill 5, so
it's hard to gauge it. So if you go first, I will take casualties. If I go first, I get a lot of mission stuff done, and I'm in a better position. And then in your turn, I take casualties, and then the next turn, I'm basically able to hit you with melee and pin you down in key areas. So the game overall favors me going first strategically. I have more maneuverability. I'll be able to pick my targets. I'll have 2 movement phases to your 1. So that's essentially what I'm thinking. If I go first, it's really in my favor. If I go second, I'm at a big disadvantage. Alright, so let's
see how we go. Ow! That was Blues. I got a 5, you got a...
hold on.
It looks like a 6, but it also looks caught. Let me state 3, I think. You're gonna have a hard time with that one.
Yeah, because it's like there's a hitbox there. Ah, well, it fell over. It was caught like on the ground.
That's fine.
Okay, then. Yeah, the friction.
It is Demon's turn 1.
Alright, Demon's turn 1. Alright, so basically what happened is I had Belakor give Chapter Master rerolls to the Pink Horrors, and that's pretty much it. And then for movement, so Nurglings moved up to get on there, Pink Horrors moved up to get on the post, the Pink Horrors started doing the raised banners, Beast of Nurgle ran, got somewhere up there. Then at the bottom, Pink Horrors ran. The Skull Taker ran forward to get in position. Then I had the Plague Drones run as well. He has a function as a bodyguard to protect him. Belakor got in the dead center to give me the points for there. I'm fairly confident in how tough he is with all the debuffs and stuff that enemies will have against him and stuff. I'm pretty confident. Yeah, and then the Nurglings at the bottom are doing Raise the Banners, and so we will see what happens. That is the movement phase. Alright, so for my shooting phase, my Pink Horrors with the basically Chapter Master rerolls fired at the Warbikes. Only one couldn't shoot him, so 18 shots, and hitting on 4s because they ran. And I did a total of like 6 wounds, and then he failed all but 1. And so I killed 1 and did 2 wounds. So that was pretty good. Alright, so that's the end of my turn. So Nourished by Terror, haven't done jack. Reality Rebels, I have 2 quarters and I have the center with Belakor. Raise the Banners is on the way. So a strategic start. I killed 1 guy, so far doing good.
Alright, you guys, so for movement and command phase, so at first I didn't think I had anything in the command phase because turns out the war bosses don't actually have any kind of Chapter Master reroll or anything like that. So then I moved on, and then I started moving, and then I realized that that's when you call WAs. And so I actually did call my speed WA because my army is more shooty. I was like, well, with how aggressive his army is, this might be my only chance to call it and have maximum effect. So that is what I did, and we will see what happens. So yes, that happened in the command phase. So movement-wise, I started with my war bikers, and they scooted right on up to these pink horrors, and so they are going to see what they can do around there. And then I moved my orc boys. Sorry, that's actually where I started. I ran them because orcs apparently only have a 5-inch move. And so I ran them just that way they could get up to this little bit of cover, because I don't want them to get shot just yet. Even though they're touching the windows and one guy is actually just out of cover. I didn't want them. Well, anyway, not important. And then the tank busters I ran just that way, because for them they need to move, but if they move, that's -1 because they're shooting heavy weapons. And then at that point they have a 6-up ballistic skill, which is basically garbage. So I was like, I might as well just run them and then just not shoot this turn to get them into the spot that I need them to. And then that's actually when the Warbikers moved, and then the Kill Rig moved. He has a 12-inch move, so he just went all the way up to the top of that objective. My Death Killer War Trike followed along because the secondary objective of mine for points with my war boss. And then the Mega Knobs ran, not to get through, so they could have gone through the thing, but just because I don't feel like dealing with Belakor just yet, I just had them on the other side of the wall and they're fanned out a little bit, just that way they could stay nice and cozy. Then my Mega Track Scrap Jet moved forward, as did my Top Kill Rig and my Def Coptas and my Boomdecka Snazwagons. Just so many names with this army. Just kind of came around the building, not trying to touch the mass grave in the middle here. And so they just kind of tucked around, and that was my movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for my psychic phase, it was pretty simple because it was just mass failure, essentially. The kill rig at the bottom tried to do frazzle, and it failed. I needed a 6, I rolled up 5. And then I smote the plague drones, doing a total of 1 mortal wound, so that was nice. Then I went to the kill rig up at the top, and he tried to use biting jaws to hit like Belakor and the pink horrors, and it failed. And then I tried to smite Belakor and it passed, but then he dispelled it or denied it. Sorry, yeah, it's the 40k term now. And so had a whole bunch of nothing. Did happen. The top half, so everything, shot at the Beasts of Nurgle. And they killed 1 and did 3 damage to 1. So that was my Def Coptas, all 4 of them that were in range. That was my 3 Megatrack Scrap Jets. That was my Kill Rig. And that was actually it.
And he would have killed the second one, but I spent the Disciples of Belakor ability, 2 CP, to take 1 failed save and reduce the damage received to 0. So my Beast of Nurgle survived my second one. He would have killed 2.
Yes. Because the word tower went through because it auto hits, and it was d6 damage, so I rolled a 6, so it would have died very much so because he failed to save, but then he used the stratagem to make the damage 0, and so that guy's just gonna come back at the end of the round phase.
No, he fully heals.
Okay. And then I went up to but I go down to the bottom half, so my war bikers, and so because I activated the wall, I have exploding 6s to hit with DACA guns, and then Bad Moons have a stratagem that gives them an additional exploding 6, so for every 6 I rolled was 2 additional shots. And so I got I rolled 4, because each one of them has 10 shots each, so that was 80 shots. And then I rolled like 14 6s, adding 28 additional shots. And so he rolled like 30 something saves, and I think 12 or 13 went through.
Yeah. Which was barely anything if you think about it. Only 13 went through.
It actually would have been tremendously less if it was the Nurgle units they were shooting at, but because they were the Tzeentch, the horrors are only toughness 3s, so I was able to wound on 3s. And so I did just enough wounds to where he couldn't try a reroll save, and so they wiped him. And because the squad was wiped, they can't split. So that was nice. And then my Killrig, Deathkiller Wartrike, and my Boomdaka Snazwagons shot at his Plague Bringers, and they did 2 damage. No, actually, because he had a mortal wound. They did 1 damage to those Plague Drones.
Yeah, because I spent a command point to re-roll his Melta shot hit from his commander, and so in the end I barely took any damage.
Yeah, so they could have killed one, but yeah, so he re-rolled that save that he failed, and he was fine. So yeah, that was it.
That was the shooting phase.
That was my shooting phase. All right, you guys. So for charges, originally I was actually going to try and charge my Mega Track Scrapjets because of the ramming speed stratagem, where I get 3d6 to my charge, and they were going to charge the Beasts of Nurgle and try and finish them off because they have mortal wounds on the charge, and then ramming speed adds an additional set of d3 mortal wounds. But then I realized that each dice would need to roll a 5+, and I'm not lucky enough to roll triple 5s. So I did not do that. So the top half did literally nothing. The bottom half, however, my War Bikers charged the Skull Taker and the Plague Drones. The Killrig charged the Plague Drones, and the Deathkiller Wartrike charged the Plague Drones. But he actually failed, but because he's an Orc, they just re-roll it because punching stuff in the face is what they do. And luckily, his base is big enough that he's able to get into combat and actually still be on the objective. So that is nice for me for a couple of reasons. And so that was my charge phase. Alright, you guys, so for the fight phase, my Warbiker swung first. Because if he was going to interrupt, it was going to be the Skull Taker, so I was like, I might as well just swing with him first. Or them. And they did nothing. So 6 of them swung on the Skull Taker,
15
did a whole
attacks.
lot of nothing. Yeah, and then 2 swung on his Plague Drones, did nothing. Or maybe 1 wound.
No, they didn't. They didn't do it, jack.
Okay, no, so they did a whole lot of nothing. And then he decided not to interrupt, which makes sense because he just had his Plague Drones that could really swing, and his Skull Taker was safe. So he didn't, and so my Deathkiller Wartrike, so my Warlord, swung, and he did almost nothing, I think. No, he did. He killed 1 guy.
Yes.
So that was something. And then my Killrig swung and killed the other thing with his horns and hooves or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were able to wipe out the Plague Drones, and the Skull Taker then swung, killing 6 of my 8 Warbikers.
Yeah, so he has 6 attacks, all hit, all wounded, and it's AP -3, ignored their armor saves entirely, and each attack was 3 damage each. So...
Yep. So that was unfortunate. I was kind of counting on them to actually do more, but they did not.
Mm-hmm. And so that was the fight phase.
All right, so they failed their leadership check, so 1 guy ran, and then they failed the attrition test, so the boss knob also ran. So the Warbiker squad is just gone.
And that was the morale phase.
For secondaries, I got 2 points for the biggest and the best because the war boss is within range of a objective marker, and that was it. There's like literally 5 things I could get points for in that. He didn't do any of them except the objective marker. And then I didn't get engaged in all fronts because I'm still on just 1/2 of the table, so my territory, and no prisoners is always going, so I was able to kill quite a bit. But that's not till the end of the game, so it doesn't really matter now. And that was my secondaries.
And for me, I got nourished by terror because 2 of his models ran, and unfortunately I did not beat their leadership with a 2d6 roll afterwards, so I couldn't get the 3rd point. I can never get those. Alright, so for the movement phase, command phase, Belakor didn't give his rerolls to anyone because there was no one nearby within his distance. Then after that, Beast of Nurgle moved up to prepare to charge. Pink Horse up top moved. Nurglings moved onto there to be away from line of sight from shooting. Changeling moved up. The Skull Taker moved up to get towards the objective. Then Belakor moved in a position where the demonic aura, which is -1 leadership, would affect everyone nearby. And so because of that, apparently everyone around him has only 6 leadership, essentially. And so I was able to deep strike all my demons within 6 inches of pretty much everyone in the center around there. I didn't even need the locus for Belakor to be a locus, so... And that was my movement phase. For the psychic phase, Belakor cast Smite on the Scrapjacks and failed it. Wasn't worth the reroll. Then I had the Changeling target the Orc boys in front of him for Smite. That went off. It was a Super Smite. He tried to dispel it. It failed. And then I did 3 mortal wounds to him. And then I just realized I cast a spell. It did a total of 7 mortal wounds, but he can only cast 1. I just realized that, so I'm going to put them back. Alright, now, overview for shooting. I started with the Flamers in the back. They shot at his boys that were on his home objective. They did 38 wounds, or 38 shots, and did a bunch of wounds, and they just deleted the squad. Then my Flamers in the center fired at the Megatrax Scrapjacks and did 7 wounds in total after 40 shots. And then the Pink Horrors and the top left, the green ones, fired at his Tank Busters, killed 3 of them. And so that was actually a pretty good shooting phase. Alright, so for the charge phase, I spent 2 of my Warp Storm points to make it so that difficult terrain doesn't affect me, and so the middle map won't bug me. So Belakor charged the Mega Knobs, made it in. The green Bloodletters charged the Megatrax Scrapjacks, made it in. The red Bloodletters charged the Mega Knobs. They failed. I spent a CP to reroll it. I made it in. Then I had my Skull Taker charge the War Boss, but I charged it in a way so that I could, after killing him, consolidate into the kill rig to tie it up in combat. But then he just heroically intervened it, so okay. And that was my charge phase. So for combat, I had the Skull Taker go first because he can be interrupted, so he swung everything on the Warlord. He had 6 attacks, reroll to hit and wound, all hit, and then he was able to do 4 wounds in total, and that straight up killed the War Boss. His attacks can't have invulnerable saves taken against him, and it's AP -3, so ignored everything there. And even with his -1 damage, if he had that, he would still kill him because he would have done 8 wounds. So, straight up, the Skull Taker killed the Warlord in one go. However, he then spent 2 command points to Orcs Are Never Beaten, so he can swing back if he's just about to die, if he dies. And so he used that, and he successfully killed my Skull Taker, so I spent a CP to reroll an armor save. It failed. Then I spent 2 CP to use the Belakor strat, Blessing of Belakor, which takes a failed save and reduces it to 0 damage. And then, because he had Brutal Cunning, he got to get 2 more swings, and that basically he finished off the Skull Taker. I spent 3 CP to try to save him, but Skull Taker died. But he did kill his Warlord, so that's something. Then up top, he then interrupted with his Mega Knobs, and he had them, 4 of them swing on my Bloodletters, the red Bloodletter squad, and he killed half of them, or 4 of them. Then Belakor got to swing, and he deleted the squad because his attacks ignore invulnerable saves, and he had 6 attacks, basically hitting at strength 12. He AP -4. They had 6s to save, and he didn't roll a single 6, so the whole squad was wiped out. And I had my green squad of Bloodletters swing on the Megatrax Scrapjacks, and so because they have Ramshackle, they have -1 damage, so the 2 damage from my Bloodletter swings didn't matter. And so they were only able to finish off 1, but they did 6 damage to the other one. So a good amount of damage, but his kill rig, so we found out that he could intervene, so we allowed it to intervene even though it wasn't the time for that. So his kill rig got some free swings on there and killed 8 of my bloodletters. The scrapjack barely killed anything. Yeah, so 8 of my bloodletters.
They did 2.
Yeah, they did 2. So the kill rig killed 6. And that was... yeah, that was the fight phase. Alright, so for the morale phase, I went first. My green squad rolled. I needed a 1. I rolled a 6. So I lost 1 guy, but because demons don't suffer from the attrition test, I rolled fine for the other 2. And then I have my red squad of bloodletters roll, and they passed. Then after that, so his Megatrack Scrapjack actually had to take a morale test. So their leadership is 7. So they lost 1 guy, bringing it down to a 6, but because they're within range of demons, it's further -1. So on a 6 up, he would lose 1 guy. And he rolled a 6. So victory there. And then his boys and tank busters rolled fine for their morale saves. And that was the morale phase. Who controlled more? Not only that, nourished by terror, his mega knobs I rolled and I equal to or beat their leadership when they were killed at the time, which was leadership 6 because they were in range of demons. So I got an extra nourished by terror. He failed a morale test for a scrapjack, that was another point. Reality rebels, I gained 4 points this turn. I have my 2 home quarters, I have the center, and because my red squad of bloodletters is in the bottom right quarter, I have 6 models there, and he has at best 4 because those are all vehicles, so I actually get that quarter as well. And then I have 2 raise the banner points, and this is actually going pretty well in my favor.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, my bottom kill rig moved towards his back objective. My boom decker snazwagons moved to kind of just sit on the objective, just barely. So that way they can see all these blood letters. My def coptas turned around to sit on the home objective and hopefully deal with his flamers a little bit. Then my boys, they didn't run, but they did move forward. And then my Megatrack Scrapjack, because he was no longer within an inch of the blood letters or engagement range, he was able to just kind of move and do his own thing. And then the kill rig also was not in engagement range, but I didn't really have anything for him to do, so he just stayed. And that was my movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for the psychic phase, my kill rig did Squiggly Curse on his flamers, doing 5 mortal wounds, and now if a model gets taken off, it does mortal wound to everyone within, or all enemies within 6 inches, but he had nothing within 6 inches, so it didn't matter. And then he smoked Belakor. It was the super smite, so it was d6 damage. I rolled a 3. And then he has a -1 damage thing. Apparently it works on mortal wounds, so we will remember that for the next time that comes up. And then kill rig, the other kill rig did frazzle, so he was able to do 2 mortal wounds on the Nurgling swarms, and then he smote the flamers. It went off and he did 2 mortal wounds there, killing the one who had 1 wound left and then doing another wound across to another flamer. And that was the psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, it was long and depressing. The boom decker snazwagons shot at his bloodletters, killing 8 of them, or I don't actually know what was left up there, so killing all but 2. And then the kill rig shot at his flamers. I believe he killed 2. And then the top Def Coptus shot next, I do believe. And they were able to kill 3 flamers just outright, just because they're damage 3. Then the kill rig shot at the Blood Reapers. There was only 2 of them, and he killed 1. So that was stupid. And then the Tank Buster shot at his Beast of Nurgle. They actually did a decent amount of damage. And then my Megatrack Grapjet tried to shoot at them, and he did nothing. And then my Orc Boy shot at his Pink Horrors. Only 1 went through because they have pistols, and he saved it. So that was my shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for charges, my Boom Deck of Snazwagons charged his 2 Blood Reapers, because I'm trying to get rid of them. Then my Kill Rig, the top one, charged Belakor, because there's nothing else for him to do, and he's just going to get charged anyway, so I might as well try and just get ahead of it. Then my Orc Boys charged his Pink Horrors, and they got in. Then the Mega Track Scrapjet charged his Beasts of Nurgle, and they got in. And then I actually almost forgot about them. The Defcoptas charged. He overwatched, spending his last command point. He did 7 damage, so he killed 1 Defcopta and 1 is down to 1 wound. And then I tried to charge my bottom kill rig into his Nurglings. I would need like an 11 or 12 or something ridiculous to really get in, but I figured why not? Might as well try. Because it'd be really cool if he did get in, but he did not. So, and that was my charge phase. Oh, no, yeah, that's my charge phase. Alright, you guys, so with my kill rig, I started fighting Belakor, and so a bunch of rolls went through. I ended up with doing, what, 6 damage to him, maybe?
Yeah.
So he's down to 13. And then I realized he didn't have any points to interrupt, so then I just kind of started going around. So my Boom Deck of Snazwagon swung on his Blood Letters. I think I only did 3 damage, but there's only 2 left, so
Yeah.
that was nice. That worked out. My Defcoptas, on the other hand, killed with literally to the wound his Flamers down there. So they did 12 damage, and there was 4 of them with 3 wounds each, so they just killed his Flamers. And then my Megatrack Scrapjet did 6 damage to his Beast of Nurgle, which is irrelevant because he will heal. And then my Orc Boys did 9 damage to his Pink Horrors, which is unfortunate because that means that 1 survived. So then he rolled, and 6 Blue Horrors showed up. So now we're just kind of trapped there with those guys. So hopefully next round they'll do something about it. But yes, and then that was combat, and then he swung back with Belakor, and then he killed my kill rig because that's just what he does. He ignores well, not that it had an invuln, but that was really it. His Beast of Nurgle swung, and his Pink Horror and Blue Horror swung, but they didn't actually do anything. Oh, the Beast of Nurgle did 2 damage. I lied. To my Scrapjet. But then nothing happened to my Orc Boys over there. So it was, yeah, it was what it is. So kind of an okay fight phase. I cleaned off some of the solo units, but obviously there's still a whole lot of game left. Not a whole lot, but I don't have a whole lot of points, so I don't know catch-up wise where this will go.
Alright, so up top, my Horrors had to take a morale check. They failed it, and then they lost another one due to attrition. They're not affected by attrition modifiers, but they still had it. Then my solo surviving Bloodletter on the battlefield needed a 1. He failed it. And that was the morale phase.
Alright, you guys, so for points, the only thing I actually got was Engage in All Fronts. And I'm in all 4 table quarters, so I have 3 points there. And obviously no prisoners is always going in the background. But for now, I just have 3 points, so I am down by a fair chunk of points at the end of this second battle round. But also the table is just thinning, so hopefully I'll start to be able to get primaries coming up.
For my turn, movement phase, Belakor didn't do anything with his command ability. There's no one to do it. So he moved 12 inches up into the top right to face the Defcoptas and hold this objective from them. Then the Nurglings moved in to help fight the Orc Boys. Changeling is just going to sit there and do stuff. My Nurglings on the bottom left moved back to try to gain some distance. 2 of them on there, just in case he touches the objective, I will still control it. I have OBSEC, so. And then my Flamers that still exist in the middle moved up towards the middle there to get a better line of sight on his vehicle. And that was my movement phase. Alright, so basically, for the psychic phase, Belakor did smited the Defcoptas, got off, and only did 1 mortal wound. But one of them only had 1 left, so that did kill 1. Then he did his Penumbral Curse, yeah, which basically was they have -1 to wound and -1 AP. But I completely forgot that Belakor, who would be fighting them, already has -1 AP, so that was a waste of a spell. So I went over to the Changeling and gave him a chance to do something. And so he cast Smite on them. He got it off on a 7. He tried to dispel it with his kill rig at the bottom, but he wasn't able to stop it, and I did 2 mortal wounds onto the boys. So that's a leadership check coming, for sure. And that was the Psychic phase. Alright, so for shooting phase, my Flamers in the center mag dumped the kill rig at the bottom and successfully did 10 wounds to it. Yeah, these guys are way undercosted for their points. Way undercosted. And that is it. So for charges, my Changeling charged his his boys, and more specifically got in base contact with his Nob. Nurgling's charged, made it in. And Belakor charged and made it in. He decided to do this after the fact, so after recording, but he overwatched with his Defcoptas, and basically he needed a 6 to hit. He missed every single shot, so not one hit him, and that was it.
Yep.
Alright, so for combat, Belakor swung on his Defcoptas. With 6 attacks, he did like 5 wounds, and that just straight up killed them all. They didn't have an armor save, and it was D3 plus 3, so they just, at minimum, would do 4. They had 4 wounds each, so he deleted the squad. He's somewhat consolidated. He's still touching the mat, but he couldn't go past the wall. So then my Changeling copied the big knob he had, which had a choppa, and successfully killed like 2 orcs. Then the Nurgling swung, and with their 12 attacks, they managed to do 2 wounds, which one was able to go through, so they killed 1 orc. Then my Iridescent Horrors swung on the knobs and did absolutely nothing. Yeah, my Horrors did absolutely nothing. And then my Beast of Nurgle wailed on the scrap check, and that was it.
So I essentially needed a 1 for my boys, and lo and behold, they got it. So they are brave, the 2 of them.
Alright, so I did control 1, control 2, control more. I got another point of Nourished by Terror for killing the Defcoptas. I was able to roll higher than the leadership, so I got a point there. I got another 4 points for Reality Rebels because I have more models in every single quarter and in the center than my opponent in 3 of the quarters, and I had the center. And I got 2 more points for Raise the Banners High. And it's, yeah, looking like my game. Alright, so we have decided to call the game there. There's far too little of my opponent to be able to start really claiming points and stuff. I've won the Battle of Attrition there. And yeah. And so MVP, LVP. So for Demons, LVP, without a doubt, it is actually the Horrors. Because while they did hold the line up top, 1 whole unit was deleted in 1 turn, and these guys didn't kill anything except for this 1 shooting phase. They were the worst performing unit.
Yeah, they were pretty terrible.
Yeah, they didn't do well this time. I mean, at the top, they just barely tar pitted by 1 save. Otherwise, the whole squad would have been deleted. So this time, they actually... I mean, they did their job. The guys on the bottom took shots that others could have taken. And so they really tanked it well. But, so it's more of like they were the worst performing at their job. And kind of bad this time. But they're still good tar pits. And then MVP is a very interesting 3-way tie. So the Flamers, the Skulltaker, and Belakor. Flamers, I mean, they killed a lot. They cleared off your back end with the squad of boys. Not only that, the other squad did a ton of damage to your kill rig, and they also held the center. They took your guys off an objective for a turn, which denied you 4 points for scoring. They were very valuable, and they killed a lot. Skulltaker. Even though he died against the war boss because he used that 2 CP strat Orks has never beaten, he did kill 6 of those bikers in 1 thing, and then the rest fled because of that. So he basically wiped out an entire squad. Can't forget that. And he did kill your war boss in 1 turn of combat. Did 8 wounds, 8 to 12 wounds, damage reduction dependent. So he did incredibly well. He did clear up and weaken your lines heavily. And then finally, Belakor, who killed an entire squad of knobs, killed one of your characters in a kill rig and wiped out an entire squad of Koptas. And just like this straight up just slaughter. It's really hard to say because everyone did very important jobs. Skull Taker killed your war boss, killed a lot of key units, which really shifted where I poured my reinforcements, my bloodletter reinforcements. Flamers did incredibly well strategically and usefully. They're very strategic, good kills. And Belakor holding, carrying, slaughtering some of the most difficult enemies. It really is difficult to say because they were all three very important and key units. But then I'm going to have to give it to Belakor because in the end he did clear off the most important enemy units and the most troublesome units in the game. So MVP is going to have to be Belakor, but it's very close. So what do you got?
Well, for my MVP is actually the War Bikers. They had a lot of shots. They did a lot of well, really they died off pretty quick because they apparently are not so great in combat. But of course, they also were fighting the Skull Taker. So
yeah,
I think as far as like they're the ones who probably did the most straight up output of damage. Just because they're one of the few core units in this list, actually. Well, I say few, but like the Orc Boys and the Tank Busters, and I think the Mega Knobs were core, but all the vehicles and stuff were not core. So they were the only ones that really worked with the stratagem. And so I just had them as MVP because everything else, like there's stuff that outlived them, but they didn't do a whole lot. And so I would say they're MVPs. LVPs, I would say, is probably the Tank Busters. They have no armor. They have terrible shooting. And they have pretty short range, and they're relatively expensive, actually. And so all of those together, they ended up doing almost nothing the whole game. So that was unfortunate, but I guess now I know. And then the kill rigs, I didn't care for them very much. I think they actually do okay in damage, and I think shooting is really just a consolation prize with Orks. I think there's really only a few units that has really just the raw shooting output to really be worth taking for Orks. I mean, they have a lot of shooting units, but I don't think it's actually good.
Yeah.
Because you can't buff their ballistic skill. There's almost no reroll buffs anywhere in their codex or anything like that. Some of the vehicles have brought gunners that give +1 to very specific guns. And so yeah, I did kind of like the list. I think I would rework it now, having played it once, and probably do some things different. I don't think the speed wall was not good.
Yeah.
If I was to capitalize on it, I would have had predominantly war bikers, so just squads of war bikers roaming around, just raw shooting numbers. And so yeah, I would say these are my LVPs. Kill rigs I was not impressed with. Their combat is okay, but their shooting is garbage. They have strong guns, like almost all of the Orc guns except their DACA guns are strong, but they almost never do anything.
Yeah, it's really down to chance.
Yeah. And so I think all in all, I would have done the list much differently. I don't think, yeah. So Bad Moons was kind of fun because of the range, but I think I would have, having played it now, would have played it differently. Just because it gives range to the heavy weapons, wasn't really much of a reason to take them. I didn't care for the War Trike very much. I know, again, he went against the Skull Taker, but I don't know. He doesn't have any reroll buffs or anything like that. He's literally just a lone guy just running around.
Yeah. I mean, he can run 9 inches one turn, so that's something.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, he can be super speedy, but to do the speed wah, you know, or I don't know. But again, this was my first time playing the Orcs, so there's that too.
Yeah.
So all in all, I think Bad Moons is interesting, but I think how it plays is a little different than how you would think it would.
Yeah.
Because basically they just gave a 6-inch range buff to heavy and DACA weapons. So I think that their clan does lean towards vehicles. Or maybe just giant hordes of shooter boys, maybe. But that's about it.
Yeah. As for me, Belakor and stuff, they are a horde army, the way the rules is. Oh, and I will say this now, I didn't notice it at the beginning, but when making lists, so apparently the Belakor army I have is technically illegal because it has no Slanesh units in it. Yeah, so...
I technically warned you guys.
So we only noticed it like after like turn 2 and stuff, because it's at the very bottom of the page and it's like a bit up too, so I didn't notice it because I only looked at the codex for like 20 minutes before the game came. But essentially it was I have to have basically one unit from each pantheon, and if I wanted to have a second of any unit, I have to have if I want to have a second of any unit, I have to have at least one other from the pantheon. So lacking Slanesh, I would have needed 2 Slanesh units in my army in order to make it legal. And so easily what I could have just done is just bring 2 chariots because they're super cheap, like 140 points for 2. I could have dropped, knowing what I know now, I probably could have dropped, I'd have to have dropped the Beast of Nurgle, which, I'd have to find 140 points somewhere. Maybe drop the Flamers, maybe, or reduce them down a little bit, but they wouldn't be as strong. So essentially all I'd have to do is take like 140 points of Chariot, and this points thing would have been legal. So maybe one less unit of Nurglings and something like that. But yeah, so now we notice that now, so you can stop screaming or angry typing and stuff, but yeah, so we noticed that. But apart from that, Belakor, he is a huge heavy hitter. He's very strong, gives a lot of interesting, unique buffs, but he really plays with all the smaller demons and things in the game. And so he's pretty cool, but he's not exactly what I thought his army would be. Yeah.
I think the challenge with Belakor is that he has so many debuffs, it makes it really difficult to really do anything to him. And then he has such high AP and damage that ignores invulnerable saves. It's quite an interesting challenge to deal with him.
Yeah, it's like all the power is on him. Yeah,
at the very least, this list wouldn't handle it. So maybe like Gazgul would probably be able to handle him.
Yeah, just because of his rules.
Capped at 4 wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's the challenge because even the Skull Taker has such high AP, and then Orks don't really have armor, but then he ignores invulnerable saves. And so interesting challenges, but not. With this list, it wasn't able to clearly handle it. Although it did clear off a lot of the units, so that was interesting. But obviously the heavy hitters you had, the Belakor and the Skull Taker, were hard to overcome. Skull Taker died with my war boss, so that was something. But yeah, Belakor, I think really the only way to handle him is just a whole bunch of shots, but it's hard because a whole bunch of shots or a whole bunch of just melee attacks. I don't know. Just raw numbers.
Yeah, well, alright then. So, GG. I will not be playing Demons next week. We'll figure out what happens. Hopefully, the Voton Codex will get updated into not Battlescribe, but like the models and stuff, so we can actually play it. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So, like the video if you like the video, comment if you want to comment, share if you want to share it, and more to come. See you then. Bye.